So in this video, we're actually going to add a comment history feature to our existing PowerApps form. And you will see it's kind of a workaround because this is not available out of the box. Alright, so in this video, we're actually going to walk through the process. How do you add comments or running history to PowerApps? So before, like in Nintex or in InfoPath, we can simply just go and add in a comment field and append changes. So what I mean is that if you go to list settings for this particular equipment's list, you would just create a column, multi-line column, right, and call it comments or what have you, and then check this option here to append changes. And what that would do, if versioning is enabled for this list, would just allow you to create like comment history or any type of history or whatever, or run in tally for a particular multi-line field on its list. As of right now, as of the time that this is recorded, that feature is not available in PowerApps. So in order to kind of fake that, what we want to do for our list is that, as you can see here, if a user comes in and edit this, we want a comments tab or a field that they can put in comments and click save. And then the next time they come in, they'll see the history of all the comments for this one particular item right here in our form pane, right? So in order to do this, what we want to do is create a separate comment list that's going to hold all of the comments for our equipment request form. And you can just simply do that here. Just create a standard list. So just call it comments, right? And then we want to go ahead and create this. Now you can have one list to support multiple forms or multiple PowerApps, and that's how we're going to configure this list. So to do that, let's just go to list settings here, and I just want to rename this. We're going to rename the default title column to application. And that's going to help us distinguish which comments are for which application. So in our case, it will be the equipment request form. And then you want to create an item ID field and make this a number field. And basically, this is going to be the ID of the request from the request list for that one particular item in the request list. So it's just a standard number field. The other one that you want to create is, I'm going to call it creator. And for some odd reason, I guess using the data source or the connectors, you have to specify a service account for that or some account. And for some scenarios in PowerApps, when you write to a list, it takes on that account versus the current user. So this creator list is just going to ensure that you grab the current user. And this is going to be a simple single line string. And we're just going to put their display name because we want to show who actually left a comment in the display field. And it gives us a lot more flexibility if we want to write to this comment list on the behalf of that equipment request list in the flow, because then you can specify this comment was written by the flow versus which comment was written by the user. And using the created by, you don't have that flexibility to distinguish between the two. All right, so that's going to kind of set us up for the future. And then finally, our last one would just be a comments field that will actually hold the actual comment. And I'm going to bring this in as a plain text field, multi-line plain text field, nothing really fancy there. All right, so now that we have our separate comments field, let's just go ahead and create some sample data. So for application, as I mentioned before, this is going to be the equipment request. And this is going to be hard-coded in our PowerApps, as you will see here. I'm going to arbitrarily pick a fake number. Let's just go ahead and put me in as Deshaun Clark. And then here is a sample comment. Now, I highly suggest that you create several rows of this just so that you can have some sample data to play with when you are actually setting up this PowerApp, this comment section in the PowerApp form. Okay, so I'm just doing some various data here, just one more, and I'll pause the video. I'll probably put like 4 or 5 in. Okay, so I have these in here. As you can see, these top 4 are supposed to reflect sample data for the same app, right? PowerApp, the equipment request app. And this ID, as I mentioned before, so for each one of these requests coming from this list, those are going to have an associated ID, which is different from your comment ID, right? But this keeps track of how many comments for one particular request. So anything with 5, these would be 2 comments there. And then I have an example here of a service request, so an application that's different. And once we finish configuring this, you should not see this service request because that's for a different application, right? Even though it has the same ID as one in this app, this comment should not pop up. And here I just got different creators here. So we got enough sample data to play with. So let's go ahead and modify our PowerApp form. So if I go into the equipment request list, hit customize, this is going to pop open Studio. And basically what we want to do, we only want comments for the view screen and for the edit screen. So in our business scenario there, it doesn't make sense to have a comment field on the new screen or when a user is creating a equipment request. So there's no need to put it there. So let's go ahead and maximize this a little bit, give us some breathing room. And the first thing we want to do, let's just go ahead and tackle the view screen. So here I have the, as you can see here, I'm not going to go into great detail because this is covered in the previous video, but we have our form broken out to 3 different screens for view, edit, and new. And that just allows us a lot of different layouts, and from between the new and the edit, there's certain fields we want to show when they're modifying their request versus when they're creating the request, and we're breaking it up and taking advantage of that. All right, so let's go ahead and make room for our tab. So we're going to create on the view form, on the view screen, 2 separate tabs to kind of house our existing, oops, I didn't mean to create a label, to house our existing requests and then also our comment. So you've seen me do this pattern before in a previous video, and this is going to be the exact same. So I'm going to bring in a button. I'm going to take off the sharp edges by throwing a radius on here, a border radius of 10. I like 10. I'm going to change the active color to something a little bit more navy-ish. Then I'm going to move the vertical alignment for this button to the top. That's going to put my label text that's inside of the button towards the top of the button, because we cover up the bottom third of the button with this image control here. And then I just want to name this something like basics, or the basic detail of this request, right? And I think that's it. So let's just duplicate this, rename this guy, the text on this one to comments, because this is where our comments field is going to be. And when it's not active, let's just choose the off color for this, just changing this to like a light gray here. And then let's go ahead and send these to back. Send to back. All right. And that's going to kind of simulate the tab from those buttons. Another thing I'm going to do, and this is more of a preference thing, I'm going to knock out that background color on my screen to something a little bit lighter, just so that this gray has enough contrast to pop. All right, so really that's it. So now we do the exact same trick as we've done before. On select, we set our various variables to true or false, and this is allowing us to show and hide various things. So I already have some global variables here. So show tab 1 is what we're going to set for our first tab, and then set show tab 2 to false. So when the basic button is clicked, we're going to show, that's going to indicate that whatever should be shown for the basic tab will be visible. Anything that should be shown for the comments tab, we're setting here to false, so that's going to be false. All right, so let me just copy this, do the inverse for this comments button. So just find the on select property, paste this in, and really I just need to flip-flop these values. So show tab 1 is false, show tab 2 is true. All right, so once you establish that, now what you can do, I'm holding down the Alt key and clicking on the button. Now I want to hide anything that I want to display for show tab 1. I need to go ahead and set the visibility property for that. So that's going to be my image. right? So this is show tab 1. That's also going to be the form itself, because in my scenario, show tab 1, I don't want the form to show up when the comments section is clicked. So now if I click on the comments button, everything else is hidden as it should be. So now what I want to do is bring in a control to show the comments, right? Because when we're on the comments tab, that's what we want to see. So I just go to the gallery and I select this vertical layout for the gallery. And as of right now, it's going to bring in, you have to establish a data source, but as of right now, it's going to bring in the sample data source. And it allows you to pick the layout. So because our comments do not have photos, we don't need a layout that includes images. And by default, you're going to get these 3 placeholders, or you can select how many placeholders you want. And the placeholders are really just going to hold the different site columns from our comments field. So if I have the body placeholder, that's the main one here, and then subtitle 2, and then the title one, which is at the top here. All right, so what we want to do is bring in the comments data source, and you can do that very easily by selecting the data source here and hit add data source, and it's going to ask you what type that you want. In our scenario, this is going to be a SharePoint type, and then it's going to ask you what's the URL of the site that you want to pull this data source from. So let me just go here and just click on this, and this will pop open in a new tab. And the site is going to be anything to the left of, in my scenario, to the left of the list piece of the URL, right? So I'm going to just go here, paste that in, hit go, and this is going to land me into the current site. And then you can see all the lists that we have defined in that site, and the one that we want in our scenario is comments. All right, so that's going to bring that in. So once you have the comments data source established, now these drop downs get populated with all the available site columns or fields on that comments field, right? So for the body, we want the comments data to come in. For the subtitle, I'm actually put the created date, because this is the date the comment was created. And then for the main title, this is where I'm going to use that creator field to bring in the person who actually entered that comment. All right. So once you have that established, let's do some cleanup here. Let's just go ahead and move this down. Let's put a background color on there so I can continue hiding my buttons, right? Kind of make it still look like they're tabs. And then this selector here, or this icon, this next icon, or the one that's really supposed to be wired up to view the details of the comment, we're not going to use that in our scenario. So I'm going to just highlight that and hit the delete key. And for these guys here, what I want to do is just format this in such a way that the date and the person who actually submitted the comment is on the same row. And I want to use it, as much real estate, maximize my use of the real estate as much as possible. I actually want to throw this date on the right of line. So I just hit the home field here and just pop this over to the right. And because I have this scroll bar, not only will I have this scroll bar here, because the gallery is going to display all the comments, and you can have many, right? I mean, for any request, you can probably have 50 comments, you know, and the scroll bar is just going to allow you to scroll through all those within a given finite set of real estate. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to push this date field over just to kind of make room for that scroll bar. And then I want to adjust this a little bit. So I think a font size of 14, again, this is all preference. So font size of 14 is way too much for what we need. So I'm going to knock all these down to a 10. And then also, I want these colors to pop, especially the comment color. So I'll probably just make that a dark black. And then the other colors are okay. Maybe I just, just a third shade gray. Again, this is all preference here. Okay, so that looks okay. And now for my comment section, I want this to take up the entire real estate minus the area that we're preserving for the scroll bar. And we want that to take up the entire real estate there. And then for the gallery control, just give it, because this will be the only thing on the comments tab, go ahead and give it the full height of the remaining piece of the screen. All right, so once we have that wired up, the last thing we need to do is take this gallery control, and let's go ahead and set the visible property on this to show tab 2, which is going to allow, if you click on the comments tab, it displays. When you click on the basic tab, it's hidden. And just like that, we're pretty much wired up with comments coming in. All right, so now what we want to do, let's just go ahead and save this off, push this up, see what this looks like, and make sure that the area that we have preserved for, or highlighted for our scroll bar, is sufficient. So I'm just going to the list, click refresh, go into a particular item, and this should pop up. And I've only done this for the view section, right? So now if I click on the comments, it shows, and if I click on basic, it shows. And obviously we want the basic one to be highlighted by default, right? So let's go ahead and wire that up. So to highlight that by default, this is a common scenario that we run into, especially when we're using that pattern to use the variables to hide or show things on the screen. You have to set the initial value. So on the initial value, so when we're going to view mode, when this first fires up, when that event fires up, we want to set our variables here. So here, let's just go ahead and set variable show tab 1, set the initial value to true, and let's go ahead and copy that. Let's copy that. This editor is a little weird. You erased it, Deshaun. Hold on. All right, and then paste that in, and then show tab 2, set that to false, and that's going to land us right on the basics tab when this when that screen initially loads. And notice that I'm only doing that for the on view, because for on edit and for new, there's a different scenario going on that we did not change or modify yet, so we're not going to update that piece yet. All right, so let's just save this off, take a quick look, see how we land. And if you hit refresh here, click on the item, this is popping up, and you should land on the basics tab. And we didn't, so here we just need to refresh, right? Because that's one thing that you always have to keep in mind. When you're making changes, you have to hit refresh to make sure that your latest changes are popping in. And now we're landing as expected. All right, so now if I click on any one of these items here in the list, let's hit refresh again. No, this is a different situation. So if I click on this item on the list, we did hit our initial value because I can see pieces of the form popping in. But this is a situation. This is only me playing with my form, right? So this list item is referencing a image, which is an invalid URL. So as of right now, what's happening is that image controller said, I can't find this image, or I can't make sense of this URL to display an image because it's not valid. So it's just displaying a blank area. So we can easily fix that because we need that area to be to display something. And fortunate enough for us, that image control has a property, it's called a fill property, and we want to fill that with a blank white, a solid white color, right? And that's going to be our solid white. Now the thing with this image control, you have several fill properties. So if you hover over, there's a field, and that's transparent by default, so we want to put a solid white there. And then if you, for whatever reason, click on it, there is a fill color. It's called press fill. So we want to change that from transparent to a solid white as well. And that should fix our situation. So now if I click this and save up, we should be good to go. All right, so once we tackle this, this is going to be a two-part video because I do want to kind of keep this lean and mean as far as this video is concerned. So once we get this working now, let's just verify this change and make sure that the image control, here we just need to refresh, make sure that image control does in fact, when an invalid image URL is given, it does in fact hide the area, right? So this is what we need. If you click on it, it stays solid. If you hover over it, it stays solid, and we're good to go. So now this is showing way too much than what it should be showing, right? So this should only be showing comments for this particular item, and here is displaying everything because we just wired up a general or the generic data source for this item. So in order to filter that out, let's go through and go to our gallery. There is, for this gallery control, there is an items property, and really you can just type in filter. It's a filter function, and basically what this allows you to do is to filter the data source based on some logic condition. So our filter, let's just go through here and walk through and make sure we're in alignment to how we want to filter this. The first thing we want to do is filter by this application field, or which is the title field. I just renamed it, right? And when you're typing in any reference to any of these site columns, you have to use the internal name versus the display name. So because I renamed this title field to application, the internal name for this is going to be title. And you can somewhat, I was going to say you can find that by sorting this field, but based on the changes in the modern list, that's not the case anymore. But you can find it if you go to list settings, and this is where for any site column, if you need to find the internal name for that particular column, just go to list settings and then click on that column, and then up here in the URL, this last query string parameter will show you the internal name. And it's super important that you use that name to represent that column when you're dealing with formulas. So in our case, we want to filter on the title where it equals equipment requests. And again, this is going to allow us to only view those comments for this particular Power App or application, right? The other one we want to do is only for any particular item is to only display the comments for that item, which is going to be this item ID. And right now we're hard coding this, but in the next video, when we actually submit a comment or write out a comment, we will specify these different fields dynamically based on the form request, right? So the item ID, I need the ID for this particular item in the equipment request field, and you can do that very easily by using the SharePoint integration dot selected list item ID. So that's the property that holds the current ID for the current item. And really that's it. So that's going to filter that out, and now we're going to use it for the selected ID. So now if I come up here and save this all of those comment fields now should be filtered based on the current item. So let's go to our equipment to request. And what we probably want to do is just pop this open in a new tab, so that way we can play around with it and really truly do a test on this. So now this is up. Let's just hit refresh to make sure that our latest changes made it up here to the site. So I select it, hit the comments tab, and now this is blank. I'm not too impressed with that yet, right? I want to test this out with other items. So this is my validation test that the filter is kicking in. I mean, at least I'm not seeing data, but I don't know if the filter is correct. So now what we have to do is just go in here and create a comment for, let's say ID 12, right? So if I go to the comment section, let's just do a quick edit, and let's just, for the sake of typing, let's just adjust a couple of these to 12. So I'm gonna grab this one, and then I'm gonna grab this one. And now if I come in here and hit refresh, only item number 12 should have the comments displayed. So if I click on this guy, and oh, I get way more than I was expecting, right? This is odd. Seems like I have the entire list. And if I click on one that's not 12, I still seem to get the entire list. Hold on, let me pause the video, see if I can figure out what's going on. Okay, I'm back. So I had to run a few tests on this, and it looks like it was just my browser session altogether. So I had to kill my entire browser and then kind of reload everything, and then it started to kick in as expected. So let's start our test from scratch. So here we have, if we pop open our comments tab in a separate, the comments list in a separate tab. Here we only have 2 items, 2 comments related to this this item, and that's going to be the one with item ID, right? So if I click on the one with item ID 12, true wireless earbuds, you notice I only have 2 comments. So now to test this out, which is what I tried to do before, we had to pause and I went to panic mode. Now I can go ahead and change the item ID to these 3 comments, and now if I come in here, hit refresh, take a look at this item, I should only get 3. Whereas before, as you saw, before I had to pause for the break, and I should have 3, right? I was getting everything, which was odd. So now if I go to 17 and hit comments, that should still be 0. If I hit 20, hit comments, that still should be 0. So now if I come in here, and here I have a 20 here, but you notice that it's not for this application. Service request is for different applications. But if I come in here and change this to a 20, I should get the Lily Hair comment and not the Jake Reed comment. So if I go here, let's try this without refreshing the browser. No, that didn't work. So if I refresh the browser, click on 20, and now click the comment field, I get the Lily Hair, which is correct, right? So now if I come in here and change this one to equipment request, just to kind of test out our title filter, right? And then you remember, when you're doing quick edit, if you make a change, you have to select on a different row for that change to be saved. So I come in here and hit refresh. What number is that? 20. So if I click on this item here, now I should get both of those. And if I change it back, I should only get 1. So here's another trick you can do. Now you notice that this may blow up, right? Because just not having a lot of luck today. So let's see what happens. So another trick you can do is that you can refresh those data sources. So the ideal is that you can see a change without having to refresh the browser, right? So now if I come in here and just add in, it's called the function is called refresh, and what it's looking for is the name of your data source, not necessarily the name of the gallery. So anything that's looking at this gallery, if there's a change to the data source, by clicking on this comment tab, you should get a refresh, right? So let's test that out. So if I save this up, now I'm gonna have to refresh the browser, only because I'm doing the standard refreshing the browser because I made a change, right? So let's refresh this. Now I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. So let's just make sure everything is correct. Click on title, click on comments. I should only see those 3. Hit refresh again, make sure I'm getting the latest and greatest. And then once I'm satisfied or comfortable that I'm actually getting the latest changes from a PowerApp, now I'm coming here and modify the data. So now I want to come in here and just change this to 20, right? And now for my item number 12, I should only have 2. And I should be able to do that without hitting refresh on the browser. Right, and you see how that changed. I'm actually holding my breath. Now if I go to 20, I didn't refresh the browser. I just clicked on the tab and now I can see it. Now this type of, that instant refresh is something that we want, right? Because what's going to happen in the next video, we're going to be able to click on this edit tab, this edit option to edit this field. We're going to create a new tab for comments. They're going to come in here and put in a comment, click save, and then they're going to go back to that list, and we should be able to see that comment right away without having to refresh the browser, right? So we still want that kind of like real-time or Ajax type functionality to still be in play here, and not say, oh, if you add a comment, if you don't see it, hit refresh in the browser. So we want to avoid that, right? All right, so let me just do one more test, just because for me to feel warm and fuzzy. I'm going to take that one out. I'm going to take this, change this back to service requests. And based on how I'm set up here, I can click on item number 20 and I should only see one comment without hitting refresh. And there it is. And you saw how I had the 3, but then once I hit clicked on the tab, it seems like it called that refresh function, and then it adjusted based on the current filter. All right, so I feel a lot better now. Again, that was just odd that, you know, once we first initially had that wired up and we were running our tests, it seems like our filters were totally being ignored and we saw the entire data collection. So in that type of scenario, just go ahead and kill your browser, fire up your browser again, and then test it out again, and it seems to work. All right, so that's it for this video. I'll catch you in part 2 where we actually put in our comment box and wire up the save event. All right, talk to you soon. Take care.